Today is Sunday, August 23rd, and this morning I'm going to speak on a topic that everyone has experience with, and that is loneliness. It's something that we encounter not just in life in general, but also in the practice of Zazen. Loneliness it's often described as a heavy, vacant, or hollow feeling. A feeling of disconnection. As if there's a wall that's separating you from everyone and everything else. So it's not really about being physically alone, although it can involve that. It's more of the thought or feeling of separation, where you long for real connection. And in those moments, you think that connection is lacking, that you're lacking. Not just with other people and things, but also the environment that you're immersed in, and also disconnection from yourself, from who you really are. There's a lot of examples of loneliness in everyday life. There's a loneliness that arises in the aftermath of a death of a loved one, a parent, a child, a pet. Suddenly, the house feels incredibly empty and quiet. So there's the loneliness of that absence. There's also the loneliness of major life changes, such as a divorce or the ending of a long relationship. And actually, you can experience loneliness while being in a relationship, particularly if you feel that you're not being seen or heard or wanted. The same thing goes with being in a community. You can be a part of a community and yet feel alienated from it at the same time. Could be the workplace, your family, the Sangha. And it might not even be a reaction to something that was said or done. It can just be the thought of not being seen, of not having your needs met or your expectations fulfilled. And holding on to it in silence. And there's other kinds of loneliness that we experience when it comes to aging sickness, disability, thinking that no one can understand what you're going through. You're in it alone. And not too long ago, there was the loneliness that we experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. Collective loneliness, when we were physically distancing ourselves from one another for long periods of time. And some of us really struggled with that feeling of disconnection to others, while others relished in the solitude, even though it was forced upon us. The National Institute of Health reports that today, chronic loneliness remains elevated, well above pre-pandemic levels. And it's believed that the pandemic acted basically as an accelerator of a phenomenon that was already underway, rather than just being a temporary disruption of it. Our habits shifted. People got used to spending less time together, less time in public space, staying at home, working at home remotely. And along with that came increased screen time, replacing face-to-face interaction. And we got used to it. For a lot of people, that trend has continued. And when it comes to habits, individual habits, for some, it actually feels all too comfortable to isolate yourself, to avoid social situations. It's easier. Life is somehow simpler without the responsibilities that come with forming relationships, which do require effort on our part. Healthy relationships require us to practice empathy and patience, a willingness to compromise, to make yourself vulnerable, even at the risk of rejection. And I'm not just talking about romantic relationships, any kind of relationships, friends, co-workers, and so on, fellow Sangha members. And that effort involved in cultivating relationships and the risk that comes with it, the risk of loss. In the process, it fulfills a natural human need for social connection. I say natural because we humans are social animals. Buddhas are social animals. Just like wolves that form packs, ants that work in colonies, bees and their hives, cows and their herds. It's the same for us humans. It's part of our hardwiring. And we, unlike other animals, can connect in a sophisticated way because we have the capacity for language. Another habit that fuels loneliness is how we misuse technology. I say misuse because technology isn't inherently bad. It's said that we're more connected than ever. And it's true, thanks to mobile technology, we can communicate with others 24/7 across time and space. It's transformed our lives in significant ways, and there are a lot of benefits that come with it, including the Zen Center's ability to have a Zoom Zendo and hybrid sesshin, and be able to bridge geographic distance to bring Sangha more closely together. But technology has changed our expectations and our habits, and there's a price to pay. Even just the transition from rotary phones to eventually smartphones. Think about how much that has changed our expectations when it comes to interaction. When someone sends a text today, we expect an immediate response. And if we don't get it, we think there must be a problem. What did I say? What did I do? What's wrong? Why aren't they available? Whereas back in the day of rotary phones, if you called somebody and there was no answer, and you couldn't leave a voicemail message, you just had to wait. And it wasn't an issue. Your mind didn't go to the worst case scenario. So yeah, our expectations for one another have changed. And some of us routinely spend hours and hours every day sending messages, checking messages, looking at notifications. Liking, commenting on videos, creating content. And it's pretty amazing that we can connect this way. We can form a connection having never met somebody on the other side of the world. And somehow it feels satisfying. And a more recent trend is that people will opt to text even when they're sitting right next to the person on a couch. There's this meme that has been around for a while of two people sitting slouched on a couch staring at the screen of their phone while they text one another. Inches apart. And then there's also chatbots. Nowadays you can form a relationship of sorts with a chatbot. You can create really the perfect girlfriend or boyfriend or friend in general. Someone who completely aligns with your expectations and wants. They never complain, and they shower you with constant praise. But again, there's a price to pay. while it can seem like it's fulfilling a need, at least superficially, to form some kind of relationship, a connection, it's an echo chamber. It's not the same as genuine human intimacy. A real relationship is not an echo chamber. It involves give and take. It's messy. It involves loss, negotiation. All of this is to say that there's growing evidence that loneliness is basically the new pandemic, and it's growing right alongside technology use and misuse. And it doesn't affect just our mental and emotional well-being. The former Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, has said, and he's also written extensively about how disconnection is the major driver of heart disease, stroke, depression, dementia, and addiction. And on a larger scale, it erodes our sense of community, our sense of trust in one another. Because the more we fill our heads with information and ideas that are tailored to our self-partiality, which is what algorithms are designed to do, the more we take all of that in, our expectations change. We lose the capacity, really, to become intimate with reality, to form connection with real human beings. Reality and the multitude of beings and things in it. We find ourselves not being able to deal with it, to handle reality. The echo chamber feels easier, safer. So that's the diagnosis. Contemporary life can be lonely, and it appears to be getting more so. But fortunately, we already have a remedy that's readily available to us. And that's actively trying to experience our life directly, not through a screen, unfiltered. And that comes down to where we direct our attention. And that's why Zazen is so essential. It's needed more than ever. It's not a hobby. It's not an item to check off on a to-do list. It's essential for us to actually be in the world, to actually experience our life authentically. And that includes all the hardships, conflicts, heartbreaks, and joys. of being in the world. To not miss out on any of it, to not shut ourselves off from any of it. But if we see Zazen as this remedy, it's not like a medicine that you take once or for a couple weeks and then you're all set, you're healed. It doesn't work that way. You know, just like being in a relationship, it has to be nurtured. It has to be tended to through all conditions, continuously. But here's the thing. Zazen itself can feel very lonely. Practice can feel lonely. For one, it requires our own determination. As we all know, no one can do it for us. Even though we get a lot out of sitting together as a Sangha, as we are this morning, ultimately it requires our individual effort. No one can tend to the breath for us or to the koan. We have to do it. And we have to set time aside to sit every day. Unless you're in the training program, which is one of the perks of it. Because you're required to attend the sitting schedule, among other things. Another sense in which Zazen can feel lonely is that every time we sit, we are setting aside all the ways that we habitually distract ourselves from ourselves. We are confronting unfiltered, bare reality face to face. The breath, the body just as it is, this body. The phenomena of the mind, confronting thoughts, feelings, sensations. We head straight into it. We don't dodge it. We don't escape or distract ourselves from it. Which is what the ego would rather us do. And it's not easy work. Habit forces have a way of pulling us in other directions. Getting lost in self-occupation. And all the while, we just keep doing our best to return. And that's all we can do. And that's the practice working. Making that moment by moment choice. To return to what you're experiencing directly. I remember the first sesshin I did, which was in this Zendo. It was a 4-day. It was a crowded sesshin. Didn't have the spaciousness that we have at Chapin Mill, which is a much larger Zendo. And I'd only been sitting for couple months at that point. And I felt so alone, even though I was surrounded by people constantly, not just in the Zendo, in the dining room. We were packed in like sardines. Literally, our shoulders were touching one another. In the dorm, during Yaza, late night sitting, I was never alone. And yet it felt so lonely. But when Sesshin ended, it was a 4-day. I never felt so connected to life. And at that moment, I decided, okay, I'm going to sign up for a 7-day, and I'm going to do as many sesshins as I can and sit as much as I can. And it didn't mean the loneliness went away. But over time, I did learn how to work with it. In the process of practice, we also learn how to work with related feelings like boredom, restlessness, anxiety, fear. Not running away from it, but getting intimate with it. And what's amazing is that we get to do this work together as a Sangha. We're practicing together, and yet at the same time, we're all alone. In the ancient tradition of Zen, monks lived and practiced close together. They still do in the disciplined environment of a monastery. There were all these stories about how they would periodically strike off on their own and do zazen for extended periods in solitary, remote places, high up on a mountain, in austere conditions, deep in the forest. And unlike loneliness, which we take to be something that's thrust upon us, as if it's something we're a victim of, we think about solitude differently, as something that we choose to pursue. And we need both. We need connection, and we need solitude. They're not in conflict with each other because they nurture each other. Sitting on your own can feel like a real test of your faith and your commitment and the stability of your practice and your mind. In a monastic setting or in a Zen training program like we have, or if you just are accustomed to coming to sittings here at the center, at Chapin Mill, or online, always sitting with others, relying on the structure, which is very helpful. If you're accustomed to that, what happens when you take away that structure? What happens when you take away the Sangha support system? And that's something that's helpful to experiment with. I'm not suggesting that you should no longer come to sittings or sesshin. There's no substitute really for the power of zazen done together as a sangha. Many of us report that we find that we can sit longer and sit more frequently when we do it with others. But just to experiment a bit on relying on your own resources. Sometimes we have to do that by necessity. For instance, we're approaching the Zen Center's annual summer break. It's about 2 weeks long. And even though we have the option of sitting with others on Zoom every day, it's harder. A lot of people report that during periods where the center is closed, that they have a harder time keeping up with their practice. They sit less. They give in to distractions, cutting the sitting short, going to check their fridge for snacks, or checking the phone. All that's easier to do when you're sitting on your own. And it's good to really notice that, to experience that, to notice if that's a trend, a habit for you, to own up to it and to work with it. To shake things up, try things differently, sit in a different place at a different time of day. Go straight through the resistance to sit and do it anyway. See what happens then. When it comes to doing zazen in solitude, there's plenty of inspiration that we can get from our ancestors. Of course, Bodhidharma famously sat facing the wall of a cave for 9 years. Another legendary figure is the 17th century poet Ryokan. Upon completing his training as a monk, he chose to live as a hermit, which he did for 30 years. It was around the age of 40 where he set out and began living alone in a simple thatched hut on a mountain. And during those years, he routinely came down to the village with his begging bowl, receiving food. And despite his solitary lifestyle, if you were to read his poetry, he writes in such a warm-hearted way about the people he came upon, late-night conversations he had with farmers and woodcutters, and also children playing in the village. Sometimes he would set down his begging bowl and play with them, toss a ball around, and then return to his hut. He wasn't attached to solitude, to the solitary life. He flowed in and out of it. Many of his poems are an expression of our capacity to be alone, but also to be alone together. Together we are alone. And I'm not talking about loneliness. I'm talking about accessing the one mind that we all share. This one mind that's undivided. I want to read a couple of his poems that are about being alone and yet ultimately never alone. Here's the first. My life may appear melancholy, but traveling through this world, I have entrusted myself to it. In my sack, 2 quarts of rice. By the hearth, a bundle of firewood. If someone asks, what is the mark of enlightenment or illusion? I cannot say. Wealth and honor are nothing but dust. As the evening rain falls, I sit in my hermitage and stretch out both feet in answer. Here's another. Illusion and enlightenment, 2 sides of a coin. Universals and particulars, no difference. All day I read the wordless sutra. All night, not a thought of Zen practice. A warbler sings in the willows along the riverbank. Dogs in the village bay at the moon. There are no obstacles in my heart, but still I lack a true companion. But still, I lack a true companion. That's one side of the coin. There are no companions to be had. There are no others. When we stretch out our feet, it's just that. The whole of life is right there. It's not possible to be lonely. But then there's the other side, the particular. I'm seated here and you're seated over there. Candles and flowers and fruit on the altar. Inside the zendo, it's quiet. Outside the zendo, the sound of a lawnmower. It's all a big family of beings and things. Multitudes. So these 2 sides of the same coin, it's not a choice of either or. It's both and. Zen master Dogen said. To study the self is to forget the self. But he also said, to forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. We'll stop here and recite the 4 vows.